That's kind of where we are with this first task order. And so we do have the money currently in the budget, under hotel occupancy tax. And so we utilize that money for this school.
So at this time, we don't have a motion for this, so I'm gonna go ahead and ask for a motion in a second, and we'll call for questions for item AC. So may I have a motion to consider allowing the city manager to authorize Deborah to move forward with this? Can I have a motion, please? Motion by Councilwoman Hernandez, second by Councilman Gonda. At this point, are there any questions for either Ms. Dockery or city manager?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Rodriguez.
Okay, so what is the time frame you're looking at completing Boulevard Patino, Civic Center, Sports Complex, and the tourism building?
So we need to arrange to, of course, get down here and measure and do that. I'm thinking that it'll probably be like 3 to 4 weeks to get all the assessments done and the recommendations made.
Okay, 3 to 4 weeks just to get an assessment, correct?
And that includes the recommendations. It also includes us preparing the CAD drawings of your existing buildings that we are reviewing. So after we come down and measure, then my staff goes back and then prepare the CAD drawings. As I understand it, you really don't have that many records.
We don't have some of the CAD drawings or some of these, so it's hard for us to give some of these drawings to give them to her. So
Okay, so we can be clear and so the people in the audience and for record, what you're doing, your services, you're not fixing the buildings. You're simply giving us the engineering plans for these, 1, 2, 3, 4 buildings, correct?
Well, the architectural
Yes, ma'am.
concept drawings,
Yes.
right.
So I would say it's totaling to $38,360. If we get all 4 engineering plans for this, and we only have time to do 2 this year or within the next 2 years, those other 2 plans are gonna probably be outdated with new rules that the state sometimes provides for ADA reasons. I would like the council to consider us approving 2 of these items on here and us not throwing away $38,000 and it not being completed at one time. If we come back and we get the repairs done within the year for those 2 buildings that the council decides to choose from, then we can come back and get the architect designs. The problem I have with it, if we get the architect designs, we're gonna pay $38,000 to get a design that we may not even complete within the next 3 years. That's $38,000.
Yep.
Okay, so my thing, I'm not done yet. What I would suggest is for us to deeply consider what we can do in our budget and what we're able to complete so we could utilize her architect plans sufficiently and use the taxpayers' money sufficiently. That's all.
I can tell you that the construction plans, we make sure we reiterate, construction plans will not be through this, they may be, let me take that back. They may get finished this fiscal year. The construction itself will not take place until next fiscal year. So you will not have any actual construction costs
Okay.
until next
Would
fiscal year.
all 4 be done next year?
The
All the
design plans,
construction, yes.
the design plans, if we move forward with design, yes.
All 4 will be completed with construction?
Design, not construction.
Okay, that's what I
Because-
want
but-
people to understand, that we're paying for a design.
Part of what this is happening here is again, establishing the budget. If we have established no budget, you will have no idea what the budget will be for this coming year. So that's part of what we're trying to accomplish is providing a budget and then saying, okay, do you want to move forward with this? And if you don't, you can say, hey, look, I don't want to move forward. This is as much as we want to do for next fiscal year as far as construction. But if you say, once you get these budgets, you say, look, I want to move forward, I want to do these projects, then at that time, you're not just spinning your wheels on maybe, right? You're going to actually say we're going to move forward based on the budgets that's been provided.
And Mayor, what I would like to say, since we utilize the sports complex frequently and the Civic Center, I would suggest hitting those 2 up. The tourism building has been vacant for 5 years. That's gonna cost us $8,290 just for plans. we still don't have anybody utilizing it, okay? We don't even know if the construction would even take place next year. If we were to go ahead and spend on to go ahead and budget and get plans for 2 properties, and when we come up to our budget, we add those construction costs to next year to get those 2 buildings ADA compliant. Or we could do Polo Patino and the sports complex, or we could do something that's being utilized more frequently. If we just spend $38,000 and we still don't know when we're gonna do it, we still don't know if the budget is gonna allow us to do construction on all 4 sites, realistically, it's not gonna happen. So what we need to do as a council, realistically, let's pick two of the facilities that we want to get fixed next year, and save that other money on the side, and then when we're available to get the engineering sites for those, then we invite her back and have her do them again, do those again.
Okay,
Part of, just to remind the council, part of what we discussed during budget was creating a chamber of commerce. We have no place to place these people. We could put them back at the old tourism building. Again, as a reminder, those folks are not ADA compliant, and that was part of this analysis, or will be part of this analysis if the council wants to move forward. But that's part of the discussion we had, and part of, again, from the hotel occupancy tax side, we also have to consider if we're gonna move forward with the creation of the chamber, budgeting for staff for the chamber, and then placing them.
But didn't they just remodel the tourist building? They spent about $40,000 on that.
Since I've been here, I don't think.
Yeah,
we've
but
spent-
before you, they did a $40,000 renovation on there.
I don't know, all I know is, I know that the restrooms are not ADA compliant, and I know that the parking there is in poor shape, I do know that.
I don't think we can add parking to
all right,
it.
council, okay, we have Councilman Leal, and then, did you have, okay, we'll go in order, Councilman.
No, man.
Okay, you're gonna yield to Councilman Gonda.
Just a question on the, since we're withdrawing the old city hall, is that $38,000, I mean, are we eliminating some of that cost as well, or, or is that part of that?
That's not-
That's part of that, part of
that's
the
not
tax
part of it.
already,
I wasn't
okay,
adding
all right,
this.
that's all, that's what I have right now.
And so, okay, Councilman Leal.
I got a question. So, y'all doing the architectural services, does that also include the schematics, the engineering portion of it, or that's just the
No,
architecture?
at this point in the concept, I've not included the engineering.
So it has nothing to do with specs, with code, or any of that, it's just the architectural service?
That's correct, the concept for,
So, even if there was changes in code in the future, it wouldn't affect the architectural design of it?
the concept, I think would still be valid 3 years from now.
Okay.
And so we're
And
trying-
so with the electronic drawings.
Correct.
What we're trying to do, what I think the goal is to try to do is try to give you a budget, try to give you, this is what something like this would look like. And then if we wanna move forward with construction plans, then at that time, we'd say, hey, do we wanna take this on as a council? But again, you're right, there's a lot of projects, and I agree with Councilman Rodriguez, we're not gonna construct all 4 projects next year, that is not, I agree. But it is something for you guys to say, this is what we wanna budget for, whether it's next year after that, you'll have some idea of, how you wanna move forward with the budget. Now, that budget amount may change depending on the cost of construction, that will change. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but my assumption is that will change from year to year.
Okay, Council, and Mr. Trevino,
Miss-
you requested.
So, Mr. Reyes, the information that I want to know, and I'm sure that citizens will want to know, is do we have plans to utilize these buildings in the future?
Can you say that again?
Do we have plans, is there, besides the chamber, building and chamber, but these facilities, are we getting ready to use them within our community?
That's a good question, and I can tell you that based on what I understood from the previous council, and the Polo Patino restrooms, for example, that has been something that's been discussed by this council and council members here for months, I think, for a while, and so that's one thing that I don't think that we would wanna take out, because I know that we've discussed that several times, but again, the other thing is the Civic Center restrooms and showers. I'll say this, during Snowden, I can tell you that we use that as a shelter, and I don't ever wanna use that facility again, for a shelter, but I will say that it was rough, and we tried our best to work with what we had, and that was the only facility we had to put people. And then on top of that, there was times where, you know, we were facilitating, I don't know if people knew, but during the snow, we had porta potties out there, we had our EMS staff out there using the porta potties. And those are things that we're trying to, you know, improve as best we can, but we had issues out there with, and it's gonna take time, with the power. We had issues out there with the actual flushing of toilets, right? And so we dealt with a whole thing, you know, scheme of things, and so what I'm saying, even if we do it a little at a time, which would mean, again, hey, can we have some restrooms, and can I come and ask you next year to maybe consider working on a water well out there as an effort for redundancy, because what happened out there, what I'm suggesting is if it's going to treat it as an emergency shelter, right? We need another source of water, not just the city water. The city, Lord forbid, the city water ever goes down again. I won't even mention what we've gone through this week, but city water keeps having problems, then we need to have an extra source of water. On top of that, we need to look at some grant opportunities for a generator. And so, you know, I don't want to use any of these facilities, and for those purposes, but I know that those needs are there. But I'm just, you know, from my standpoint, we could incrementally, you know, make some improvements. I think we'll
And then that's where we're looking at, to be
Yes.
proactive in these situations that we need to look forward, that we can prevent from going, that stop us from things like the cold front and COVID. So like we gotta be prepared and be proactive in these facilities. We need to be up to date and need to be ready for the usage of our citizens.
And the sports complex, I think on that, and just to make sure, the restroom, I listen to folks, I listen to Ram and all these people I think he's worked there for 20-some years, and I think he said there's been very few things, improvements since 28 years he's been there. I'm talking like, correct me if I'm wrong.
I agree.
So I know that's probably neat. The tourism building, and I spoke about that, so I'll just leave it at that. City Hall, we can have that discussion in the executive session.
So council, where we are, we've got a motion and a second to approve all four. Councilwoman Rodriguez brings up a good point. Should we want to go back, if we get our motion to amend and get our second to do that, we can pick the two that we want. Councilman Torino made a good point. It's terrible that we have to spend this kind of money just to know where we need to go with this. And so, all great points of what we need to do to move forward with this. The good news, and again, love to be fiscally conservative as much as possible as we move forward. Budget, we're going to really need to be. The blessing that we do have is our hotel motel tax. The good thing is that, you know, those can only be used for specific items such as this. And so that is one fund that is flush for things such as this. And so either or, if who made the motion on that was, I think it was Sonia, and the second was Lionel. If you care to amend your motion and you care to second it to anything that you've heard contrary, we can move forward with that. You need to identify the two or the three that you want. If you want to move forward with it, we'll go ahead and call for a vote. If the vote passes, then we'll move on to the next item. If the vote doesn't pass, then we'll move on. But at this particular point, it would be, Sonia, your pleasure.
I would consider the sports complex and the Polo Patino.
Okay, so there is an amendment to her motion for the sports complex and Polo Patino, was seconded by Councilman Gonda. So if you're in favor for that, that's what we have on the docket. So we have Polo Patino and sports complex, okay, those two items. Now, at this point, is there any questions?
No.
Okay, you ready? All right, we'll call for a vote. All in favor of the amended motion, please raise your right hand.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously, okay?
Thank
We've got two items on the docket for you. Thank you very much. Thank you, council. I'm gonna do this one more time. We're gonna ask if we can move item 8D to the forefront. And, so I'm gonna ask for a motion in a second. There's a motion by Councilman Gonda. There's a second by Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez. We're gonna move item 8D to the forefront. At this time, we're gonna discuss and consider authorizing the city manager to award, negotiate, and enter into a contract with KJ Oilfield for the perpetual brush disposal services in an amount not to exceed $32,000. This is an action item. I'm gonna call for a vote, and, not a vote, excuse me, I'm gonna call for a motion.
Motion.
There's a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez. There's a second by Councilwoman Garza. At this point, I'm gonna turn it over to our city manager, and we'll follow it up by questions. Fred?
Yes, Mayor and Council, in your packet, beginning on page 70, and I think it ends on page 84. Page 83 of your packet is a proposal that Mr. Montes put together. Mr. Montes actually, he actually worked on the brush disposal of the last project. We got one whole bid for this. This was one, and he was the one that responded to it. And so part of our discussion has been, and we talked some, was trying to figure out, one, if the council decides to award, when this would start, how it would work, the first collection of what the brush we currently have out there. And we've been accumulating since November. We've been accumulating brush, and what our goal is to not try to make sure that this pile doesn't get any worse than what it's been. And you guys are aware of what it looked like. So part of our discussion is one, trying to figure out the collection of that brush and then the payment for that. He's requested that we pay him $14,000, which is half of his proposal, which would be 2 quarters for that brush that's currently out there. And then from there on, he would charge us by quarter. I'd have to get with the city attorney on some of this stuff, as far as the actual verbiage of the contract. But the idea after that, every quarter he would come in and pick brush up, and he would charge $7,000 every quarter for the pickup. And then, now, part of that is, it doesn't matter, and part of our discussion is, it wouldn't matter how much brush is out there, whether it's 1 tree trunk or 1,000 of them, he would pick that up as for $7,000. So I just wanna make sure that the council's aware of that, that part of the discussion.
So that comes out to 28,000 a year.
Okay. Councilwoman
Sorry, Mayor.
Rodriguez, go ahead.
So that to me is reasonable. We do get when was the last day that he picked up? When we cleared it out before it started accumulating again?
When did you finish this one?
It was in, late November.
Okay, so November, then we're December, January, it's pretty high already.
Yeah.
So it's high enough that you pass by and you can see it.
Alright.
So if we were to do every 3 months
Mhm.
at 7,000, that's 28,000 a year.
Mhm.
That is still way under than what we paid to clear out.
Correct.
Well,
Yeah.
every time I say that number, it just,
Yeah, it's a lot.
it's a lot, okay? I think that's reasonable. And it's keeping it clean, and I like the way he did his work the last time. It was fast, it was clean, and, you know, it was done in a sufficient amount of time.
Thank you, Councilwoman Rodriguez. Fred, I have one, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Well,
Go ahead.
I have one question there. It's $32,000.
Yes, sir. I'm glad you caught that. The additional $4,000, we're gonna look at not this year, but next year. And this contract, what we're asking is it rolls from year to year. And then for a maximum, and again, this will be, we'd like to consider a 3-year agreement. And part of that is to consider a CPI increase. Again, I'd have to get with Mr. Montes, I hope not this year, but next year, we're gonna consider CPI increase. We leave that additional, I'd say $4,000 in there, but I don't anticipate us, the CPI.
You don't want to tell them in advance that
I
we'll
don't
do that.
anticipate the CPI being up that much. We'll look at the CPI index and base whatever increase off that, but it will not exceed every $2,000. And so that's kind of the way I left that as part of the request.
Councilman Leal, did you have a question?
Yeah, so, if I'm understanding correctly, since the last time it was picked up was in November, is there gonna be a prorate from November to January, and then start the contract in January all the way to, or is it just gonna start from January, and then we pay the 14, it's picked up, and then from there on, it's gonna be a rolling contract?
What we're gonna do, what we're proposing is have him pick the brush up this month sometime, and then we will not, we'll get another cleanup, I guess, September, October.
Correct, in the next
And then
3 months,
we'll
in the third
budget-
quarter.
We'll put that under the budget for $32,000, and then we'll pay him off that
Off that.
amount. Yes, sir.
And, you said it's gonna be a rolling contract?
It'll be a rolling contract, assuming that we all can agree that he's gonna
The
turn
terms.
on, and that we can agree on the dollar amount. If it gets to a point where he can't sustain because he's, the costs or whatever, then we'd have to come back and revisit, but he's assured me that that's not gonna happen.
I don't see a problem.
That's what I like to
Be
hear.
realistic, I mean, come on, we'll grow what, 6% annual rate, whatever, it's not gonna hurt anything. Well, I'm pretty sure we're fine 3 years at least.
All right,
Unless something radical happens with $15 a gallon of fuel, I mean, it's goddamn,
fixing to hit the recession.
I mean, what I'm saying is, I mean, it's pretty down.